Chapter 7, Topic 4, Anabolism. In this last topic of the chapter, we're going to talk about anabolism, carbohydrate biosynthesis, protein synthesis, amphibolism, and assembly of the cell. The objectives for this topic are be able to provide an overview of the anabolic stages of metabolism and be able to define amphibolism. Let's start this topic by looking at what anabolism is. This process is sometimes called biosynthesis, which is the term that I personally prefer to use, so I apologize if I mix terms during this lecture. Cells can build any of the 4 biological molecules we talked about way back in Chapter 1. The production of these has 2 requirements. The first of these is the obvious: the cell must have the building blocks available. If you have ever heard the term essential amino acids, this is referring to amino acids that you and I, as humans, must consume. The other amino acids can be made by our body, but we have to obtain some through our diet because our body can't synthesize these. Besides having the tools available, the cell must need these items to be created. The production of unneeded tools only wastes precious energy creating unnecessary items. This all circles back to heterotroph and autotroph classification we discussed a few chapters ago. This is where autotrophs are capable of generating all of the building blocks these need, while heterotrophs must consume at least some of the building blocks that they need. As you have probably gathered from our topic on catabolism, glucose is very important to the cell. The cell will go as far as to convert other sugars to glucose. That is how much the cell needs glucose. When glucose enters the cell, it will normally be diverted to the glycolysis cycle for energy harvesting. However, if the cell has enough energy for the moment, these molecules will either be turned into storage molecules, such as starch or glycogen, or lipids, or are utilized to build any number of molecules that carbohydrates play a role in. Another major type of biosynthesis is protein synthesis. As we talked about in previous chapters, proteins make up 50% of the dry weight of the cell. This means that this is a major component that must be synthesized within the cell. There are 20 amino acids that are needed to form proteins in the cell. Some cells can manufacture all of these amino acids, while other organisms have to actually ingest or bring in these amino acids in order to use them to make new proteins. So how does the cell do this? It is through a process known as amphibolism. The cell is very frugal and doesn't waste anything. That means the cell has a number of ways to stop the catabolic or anabolic processes that are occurring and redirect these molecules into a different process to meet the cell's needs. This accomplishes 2 things. First, it doesn't create products that aren't needed by the cell, and secondly, it ensures that the cell doesn't waste energy or reactants that it doesn't need. So what happens after all these processes occur? The cell will either replace old cell parts or will store them up until division occurs. In order for cell division to occur, the cells must duplicate everything, including DNA and cell membranes. To summarize this topic, anabolic processes will take building blocks brought in by the cell and broken down by catabolism that are needed by the cell to replace cell parts that have worn out or to prepare for cell division. The balancing of catabolism and anabolism is called amphibolism. Well, that's it for this chapter and for this topic. So remember that you need to be able to provide an overview of the anabolic stages of metabolism and be able to define amphibolism.